Coming up next in This Week in Computer Hardware, USB 3.0 interferes with 2.0 GHz RF. Uh-oh. Exploit streaming problems, supercars from NVIDIA and AMD, amped wireless R20000G, AMD's not for sale, Hitman Absolution, we got a giveaway. All that and more coming up next on Twitch.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Twitch is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 195, recorded on November 15th, 2012. Tinfoil, USB 3.0, and Hitman Absolution.
This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by Lantronix, maker of the X-Print server. Print from your iPad, iPhone, or any iOS device to virtually any printer. For more information, visit xprintserver.com/twit and enter the coupon code TWiT to receive free shipping on your order.
Welcome to Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware. I'm Patrick Norton, and this is the weekly show on TWiT where we try to bring you the most important and exciting news in hardware and answer your questions about computer parts, getting your computer to run faster, and hey, maybe a little something about the tablets and the cell phones too. Joining me as always, Mr. Ryan Shrout of PCPer.com. How are you tonight, Ryan?
I'm doing good. You know, what's interesting is some weeks it's harder to bring the most interesting information than it is other weeks. This week's not that bad. I don't know why that came up, but we have a good amount of stuff to talk about. Yeah. But it's just some weeks it's tougher, especially as we start getting into between Thanksgiving and Christmas. A lot of people, PR agencies tend to focus on other things.
CES.
If your product is not out by the 1st of December, chances are you're waiting a little while. So we'll have to see what the December doldrums bring us.
It's funny, now I'm hearing Lord Eddard Stark saying CES is coming and the winter is coming voice.
So it's like the worst feeling in the world for me. It's like, oh yeah, I'm getting CES meeting requests already. And I'm like, ugh.
I got my first 3 weeks ago and I just started twitching. I'm like, this is way too early. October is too early for CES 2013. It's kind of an interesting thing, though. We'll be doing more viewer questions. We'll be probably talking about builds and stuff. And obviously, there's going to be holiday shopping questions, and we'll get those. Yep. If you email us at Twitch, TWICH, at twit.tv, that's the email address. And if this is your first time at the show, you can find more of the episodes at twit.tv/twitch. Do you want to talk about the possibility of USB 3.0 interfering with all of your 2.4 gigahertz devices, as in Wi-Fi and your microwave? And your cell phone? No, excuse me, your wireless phone? Or should we start with the absolute lust that many people are developing for Hitman Absolution?
All right, well, I guess we can talk about Hitman first. Okay. That'll be a little bit quicker. Did you play any of the other Hitman games?
I have before? Occasionally.
Okay.
Mostly, I'm a big fan of the movie with Timothy Olyphant.
Yeah, that's pretty good as well. The games are actually pretty compelling. We're getting into a stride of game releases that I think will carry us into the Christmas season, the holiday season, pretty strongly. We've already had Medal of Honor released. We've had, why am I blanking all of a sudden? We've had several other releases coming out, but we've got Hitman Absolution, which is a new game. It's not a first person shooter. It's not a strategy game. It's more of a stealth assassination game, but there's a lot of humor in it as well. For as serious as it tries to take itself, sometimes you're also killing people in a clown suit, which can be very funny. It comes out on November 20th. The only reason I wanted to bring that up or had brought it up earlier is we're going to do a live stream on that launch day which is this coming Tuesday on November 20th at 8 p.m. Eastern. At PC Perspective, we're going to live stream some of the gameplay and have some prizes to give away. But we'll also follow that up with Far Cry 3 is going to be a big release for the PC market as well. So there's a lot. If you're a PC gamer and you want to exercise those graphics cards that you just purchased, that I think November and December are definitely going to be times to do that.
Should be exciting. Speaking of exciting, USB 3.0 are. If you're not into spending for the Thunderbolt cables or you don't have a Thunderbolt motherboard yet, which is probably a likely thing if you're on a PC, if you're running Windows, slightly less likely if you're on a Macintosh system. Intel recently actually published a paper, and we actually got a tweet about it earlier this week from at GC Ready. Intel says USB 3.0 causes interference with all 2.4 gigahertz devices. Thoughts? And my first thought was like, I run USB 3.0 and I haven't seen any interference on my 2.4 gigahertz devices. But if you go into the paper that was linked to there, essentially, as you start digging in there, quote, the noise from USB 3.0 data spectrum can be high in the 2.4 to 2.5 gigahertz range. It's down in section 3.1. The noise can radiate from the USB 3.0 connector on a PC platform, the USB 3.0 connector on the peripheral device, or the USB 3.0 cable. This is bad because that basically means the cable and both ends of the cable at the PC end and at the device end can potentially be leaking a whole bunch of RF interference. If the antenna of a wireless device operating this band is placed close to any of the above USB 3.0 radiation channels, it can pick up the broadband noise. So on that thing, it's like, okay, so if the end result is you start scrolling down, they give you a nice chart of the noise, and then they do a test where they took a wireless mouse, plugged the wireless mouse dongle into the port next to the USB 3.0 port that was connected to an external hard drive, and then basically looked at it. And, USB 3.0 hard disk drive not connected, no impact. USB 3.0 hard disk drive connected, the mouse was okay 2 feet away from the wireless mouse dongle, and they had lagging response at 3 feet away and lagging response at 5 feet away. And then the USB 3.0 hard disk drive connected and writing data to it, same situation where 3 or more feet started to create problems. And there's part of me that's like, as shown in Table 3.1, there's degradation in the performance of the wireless mouse when a USB 3.0 device is connected to the notebook computer. Now, you got to be like 3 feet away. So it's, if you're using a notebook, it's probably not. Most people don't use a notebook with the mouse over here. Right. Desktop, that could be more of an issue. They basically said a hard drive creates the problem, a flash drive creates the problem. Yep. And part of me is thinking here like, this stuff has been FCC tested. It's gotten approval because it's on the market. There are people using wireless mice at Intel. At least you hope you do.
And I believe that's how this information, was compiled, was because of that, right? And what's funny is they sent me this link. They sent us this link on Twitter, and I was like, oh, okay. And I kind of looked at it and went, that's kind of weird. And then I scrolled down to that figure 3.4. Right, and that table 3.1 that you were just talking about, where you have this lagging response on mice, and I sat there for a second and I go, I've had this happen to me a half a dozen times, like in the last week, and now I'm starting to like remember and think back all the times where, basically it doesn't use brands on here, but based on the little diagram of the wireless mouse dongle, it looks very much like the Logitech RF. Devices that are very popular in mouse and keyboards. And we use those all over the office here. And we use a lot of external USB 3.0 hard drives for removing data and copying benchmarks and all that kind of stuff over as well. Right. And then Ken, who does our video production stuff, said that this happened to him on his home system, where he had the RF mouse and keyboard dongle plugged in onto the front USB connector, USB 2, and then when he plugged in a USB 3 thumb drive, his mouse and keyboard stopped working. And he didn't really put the 2 and 2 together, just thought, Windows had hiccuped, moved the dongle around to the back of the system, and the mouse and keyboard worked fine while leaving USB 3 drive up front. So it's really interesting. And the white paper that Intel released actually came out in April, but I haven't really heard anybody talk about this. They showed demonstrations of like shielding a hard drive, shielding the cable, shielding the connectors, and how that reduces noise, the noise interference from it. They even go some of the worst case scenarios, which is like if you have a USB 3 and USB 2.0 ports stacked on top of each other, even at 2 feet away, your mouse is non-responsive, not slow response or sometimes response, but completely non-responsive, which is obviously very bad.
Yeah, part of me is just absolutely, and it's funny, right? Because you look around like, okay, Apple has finally adopted USB 3.0. It's pretty much standard on new note. There's at least one, like on every new notebook that I've been getting my grubby little paws on, and at this point, it's funny. I want to go back and test it on the desktop. I do most of my USB 3.0 stuff because I'm wondering if the 6 inches in between the dongle I use and the drive, or just connecting the drive to the front of the case, has prevented the interference issues. Because one of the, like Ryan, you pointed out, they talked about shielding things and adding additional shielding to the USB port itself. But one of the things they say were like, wireless mouse dongle stacked, or excuse me, wireless dongle placed on opposite side of USB 3.0 port. Everything was fine. And then they talked about like, using like a 2-foot USB cable to move your wireless mouse dongle away.
And they kind of give solutions at the end of the document, right? They talk about if you have the USB 3.0 peripheral device with a little bit extra shielding, and you make the connector on the motherboard a little bit better, then at 2 feet, 3 feet, 6 feet, and 8 feet, they had perfect response with the mouse and that kind of stuff. Whereas worst case scenario, you get no response, you get intermittent lag, all the way to perfect use case. So it was really interesting to see, because just to be honest, we don't have the technology to the measuring equipment to find those sources of interference, right? It takes a company that has the resources like this. Like, I'm not going to be able to show you the power dB kilohertz ratings and frequencies and that kind of stuff to show, okay, that makes sense, right? It would have been, if I would have found this, it would have been simply trial by error.
Right. No, I see where you're going. Yeah, you would have been like playing in like, if I use this port, my mouse stops working. But only, if you're, for my desktop, I'm wondering why my desktop didn't stop working. And then I realized maybe the 6 inches away, having the USB 3.0 port here, the USB 2.0 dongle for my mouse here, was enough to do that. But essentially what they're saying is there's a lot of noise coming out between 2.4 and 2.5 gigahertz, like 25 dB. And, it's broadband, and it basically just pukes all over that chunk of bandwidth. And if you're within a few inches of that source, the USB 3.0 dongle, it's going to screw up the reception for a wireless USB dongle. So if you're starting to use USB 3.0 and you're having problems with your peripherals, try moving your peripherals, try moving the USB 3 to a different port if you can. Basically get as much distance between the USB 2.0 or the USB wireless device and the USB 3.0 device, or you're going to go slightly nuts. Improving the shielding on the USB 3.0 receptacle can help reduce the amount of noise radiated, says, Intel. So if you want to get your crazy on and make sure you don't short out your motherboard in the process, you can start grabbing your heavy-duty aluminum foil and trying to isolate the ports. Yeah. But I just want to say, be really careful, because nothing's more embarrassing than burning up your motherboard or, blowing out, letting the magic smoke out because you blew a couple capacitors because your little piece of aluminum foil that you were using to shield your USB 3.0 port fell off. When you opened up your CD port or something. It's odd. It is odd that this is just starting to show up.
Yeah, and it's obviously been there since USB 3 has been a thing, right? It's more of an issue now because Intel has integrated it on its controllers, and now it's going to be completely 100% across the board, widespread. And it may not end up being that big of a deal if vendors know about it.
Right.
This will be an issue like with notebooks, maybe, where all the USB ports are on one side. Yeah. That could be a problem. But if you have USB ports on both sides, chances are moving it to the other side will probably fix a problem. But as long as as long as we're out there telling people about it, it should at least help the troubleshooting aspect of it, which for me is the biggest deal here. It's like, oh, now it makes so much sense, right? Okay. Yeah. I moved that connector around to the back and it started working. It wasn't that the driver suddenly stopped working for this keyboard. It was possibly interference. So
the most affordable next generation. I'm like, really? It blows my mind that nobody, I don't know. I'm waiting for the email that says, well, obviously Thunderbolt is a superior solution because the gated controls used by the ICs at the either end of the cable prevent this sort of interference. Right. Insert comic book guy voice. Let's just move on to a completely different but still wireless topic. Amped wireless is it the R20000G router?
Yeah, isn't that a great model number?
I have seen Amped wireless on Amazon. And it's kind of funny. Okay. It's one of those brands that kind of shows up. There's the actual no brand sort of brands of routers on Amazon. Then there's stuff where it's like, isn't that a cell phone company? Whenever I see Amped Wireless, that's my first thought. Like, isn't that a cell phone company?
I think I feel like it might have been a brand for a cell phone company. It's definitely not the same company.
Okay.
But the idea with this kit is it's supposed to be like high power stuff, right? Longer, wider range, 802.11n, that kind of stuff. As it turns out, it's not so much.
Yeah.
It's apparently rated at 600 milliwatt for the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum. And I didn't write this review. Chris wrote this for PC Perspective. But in doing more research after our podcast last night, some people sent me some links. And apparently 500 milliwatt is now pretty standard for high-end routers, right? Even if they're not, being marketed as high power. So, and in our testing, that proved to be the case as well. It didn't really do any better than the Asus or the Apple routers.
It was really funny. We were actually talking about last week. We had a question where a guy's like, my Wi-Fi sucks. How do I make it better? And I talked about, my favorite, which is kind of, we actually talked about it this week where somebody actually made one out of a beer box and aluminum foil. Yes. But when you look at what is going to improve your Wi-Fi quality, number one with the bullet is receiver sensitivity, which brings us kind of back to the USB 3.0 thing we were talking about. Number two is antenna. Is basically having an appropriate antenna and having an appropriate setup, and then a distant third. If you look at Wi-Fi range calculators, a very distant third is transmit capability. Because there was this point where all of these third-party vendors were selling these like 500 milliwatt, umpteen milliwatt external signal boosters, and people are like, "I'm going to have the best Wi-Fi signal ever," and they bought their like $100 thing and they bolted it onto the antenna port in their Wi-Fi card, and it didn't help things much because it was sending a great signal out to the router, but it wasn't doing anything to improve the quality of the signal coming from the router to the machine unless you kind of put them at both ends.
Right.
So yeah, I think the whole transmit power thing is a bit of a MacGuffin to me. Helps if the router's high powered, but as you pointed out, it's pretty common. I mean, was it a decent interface? Was the performance good?
The performance was okay. Even when pairing it with its own branded Wi-Fi adapter, it didn't do anything more spectacular than what the Asus router could do, or what the Asus adapter could do. And in fact, in several cases, pairing the Asus adapter with the Amped Wireless router performed better than the Amped Wireless adapter and router together. So, yeah. I mean, it wasn't a bad router. But it's not living up to any of its claims of being high power, wider range, that kind of stuff. We've kind of come to expect just way over marketing in terms of your data rates on these types of things. Lots of claims of 450 megabits per second on router speeds, and not getting that. But with range, it's like, okay, look, it's not really working out for you. And it's not cheap or anything.
I got to say, Chris had a really beautiful line towards the tail end of the article, and I don't want to give anything away here, but quote, with an MSRP of $99 and an online price of $79, it's too expensive for what you're getting, especially when compared to newer and faster adapters. For $10 less, you can pick up the, I'm going to leave that a secret to make you go look for it and go to PCPro.com, that beat the UA2000 in almost every test, often by a large margin. So...
Yeah. And I think more and more people are using wireless networking for their desktop PCs as well. So this type of thing will be more important. People will care about how close you're getting to those speeds and under what circumstances. Right. It's always kind of a hit or miss type of thing. You can't test for every scenario with wireless.
Ethernet.
Yeah, exactly. But I was surprised how many people, when we did a survey earlier in the year, how many people wanted to use or were already using wireless on their desktop machines. It's just, it's easy, right? Yeah. It's not the best, but it's easy.
And a lot of people, they rent apartments, they want to pull cables throughout their house, or maybe they're in a situation where pulling a cable through their house would involve a lot of trauma and removing a drywall. It's one of the advantages of having a single-story house with a crawl space. I can put Ethernet anywhere I want. The Tesla K20X accelerator card from NVIDIA powering the Titan supercomputer. Is it worthy of the name Tesla, Ryan?
Sure, why not? This is so both AMD and NVIDIA. Hyperbole. Yeah, exactly. Both NVIDIA and AMD announced new professional level graphics cards. Right. What's interesting is that the Tesla card here, the K20X, is actually built on a new GPU, the GK110. We've talked about it, I think, a few months ago. This is the first product that's being released in. We haven't seen a consumer card yet. This card is about $3,600. It's the highest performing NVIDIA GPU in single precision or double precision performance. This GPU is really built for scientific computing, whereas GK104 was built for gaming. This has a lot more of the double precision performance, which is what is interesting there. Maybe more interesting about this particular product is the fact that it was co-announced with the Titan Open Science supercomputer. So now if you scroll down a little bit in that post, you'll see this particular it's a computer, but it's racks and racks and racks of computers. It has over 18,000 of these Tesla GPUs, and apparently it has, where's that at? 299,000 16-core AMD Opteron processors.
So that's where they all went.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, and it's one of the fastest, one of the most efficient. I think it's maybe number one or two on the supercomputer thing now. Right. Good stuff there. And then not a huge deal for maybe our particular gaming audience, but AMD announced one, and theirs is maybe a little bit more interesting as well. Well, I'd say it's the same. So both of these announcements are products that gamers want that are being given to these professional markets because they have much higher margins. Yeah.
Do gamers want them because they will actually improve gaming performance over the cards they can normally buy through consumer channels, or do gamers want them because they sound faster than what they can currently buy?
Well, they definitely are faster. Whether or not you need that extra speed is debatable, for sure. GK110 is definitely going to be faster than GK104. The Fire Pro S10000, another great modeling number graphics card, is
the dual Tahiti Fire Pro S10000.
Right. Well, Tahiti is the GPU. Tahiti is what is in the 7970 today. But AMD, they teased when that card was first released, like back in January earlier, they teased the 7990, which was never actually officially released from AMD. Power Color has one out now, but it was never actually officially released from AMD. This is what that card would have been, right? This is a dual GPU graphics card. It's essentially a dual 7970. And the reason I think we can safely say why this was not released in the consumer world is that it has a 375 watt TDP, which is 140 watts more than even NVIDIA's new Tesla card that we just talked about.
Ouch.
Right? I mean, it's high, and it's going to be hot, and it's hence
the triple fan.
Right. Lots of display outputs, really high performance part. AMD is just trying to make inroads in the pro compute markets and that kind of stuff too. But interesting to see, just because I know both of these technologies, the new GPU from NVIDIA and the dual GPU part from AMD, is something that gamers have been wanting to see. But if you're going to make those chips, if you're NVIDIA or AMD, if you're going to make those cards, you're going to want to sell them where you can sell them for $3,000+ as opposed to like $999 or something like that. So just makes sense.
This looks like a good place for us to talk about another AMD story. AMD won't be selling itself whole for now, says Jeffrey Holstrom wrote up on PC Per. Quote, AMD did not refute the register's report that they are in talks with JP Morgan, only that there are no plans to sell the company right now. The possibility that some intellectual properties might be for sale to the right bidder at the right price was not completely refuted, though. AMD is just not tasked with keeping AMD is not just tasked with keeping PC users interested in their company. They also have shareholders to answer to who recently have had less to thank the company for than the enthusiast crowd has. Yeah. Quote, AMD's board and management believe that the strategy the company is currently pursuing to drive long-term growth by using AMD's highly differentiated technology assets is the right approach to enhance shareholders' value.
Did you get all that?
AMD is not actively pursuing a share of the company or significant assets at this time. So the people who are responsible to the shareholders say, we're pretty sure we're doing the right thing, and the company's not really for sale, but we might be using to looking to maybe sell off a bunch of patents to Google or Intel or anybody else with a giant checkbook like Samsung. And that's completely me pulling a tech name out of thin air, not because I have any inside information, so don't sue me if you're a shareholder. So we'll just look for the escape hatch or the potential ripcord for getting some additional funding by selling off IP or selling off the company if somebody wants to pay a lot of money for it. That's just weird.
It's look, it's no secret the company has been struggling for a long time. I don't know.
You.
Like it does, because there's lots of little nooks and crannies in the discussion, right? Because they're the only x86, they're the only other x86 license holder out there other than Intel. So Intel can't buy them. They can't really sell themselves off without a huge legal complication involved with that x86 license. The federal government would be involved because they have already kind of claimed that there's a national security issue if those licenses kind of get outside the country. So don't expect a Chinese or a Korean company or something like that to be able to come over and buy AMD. There's all kinds of weird things that can go on. The truth of the matter is their GPU technology is what is valuable still. The CPU technology, obviously, they're struggling with that, so it doesn't hold nearly as much to it. There are partnerships that they've announced with ARM and their stance that they're going to make ARM-based processors. In 2014, kind of gives you an idea of what direction they're heading in. And all they can do is hope that they didn't wait too long to start making some of these changes. I still believe that the idea of an APU makes a lot of sense, where you have a CPU, GPU in one product. You start getting into instead of it being two separate parts of a processor, it's one cohesive unit in terms of memory levels and all that other kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. It still makes a lot of sense. The struggle is, does AMD have the market share and the pool in the industry to make it happen before everybody else catches up, right? And once everybody else catches up, then they lose their advantage, and we're back in the same cycle again.
We wait with bated breath.
We do.
It's hard. It's hard to be AMD right now.
It is.
And up next, I'll say something even less insightful and youthful and useful. So the other breaking news, Steven Sinofsky leaving or getting pushed out of Microsoft this week. So Scott wrote this up at PC Per. Our regular viewers know that I am not too fond of Microsoft's recent vision. I will get that out of the way right at the start. I'm a major proponent of open platforms for uncensored art with perpetual support, and Windows 8 shows all the signs of Microsoft turning back on that ideology. And Steven Sinofsky, the one who allegedly came up with that vision, is no longer with Microsoft, effective immediately.
This is the guy that came up with the Metro idea, the idea of the Metro interface, the idea of the App Store, and adopting that product-wide rather, on the Microsoft field. RT, servers, desktops, laptops, etc. What was interesting about this announcement is I was traveling over the weekend, and on Tuesday morning, the USA Today front page of the business section was talking about this story, right? They were talking about this guy leaving and what it meant to the company. Now, unfortunately, the title of the story, just to give you an idea of what mainstream media thinks people are either knows or thinks people are really concerned about, is the title was something to the effect of, does this mean the return of the start menu?
No.
And I was just like, that's such a top, like a top layer view of what is going on.
You've never rigged a headline to encourage more people to click on it, Ryan?
Yeah, but I'd already bought my USA Today. I didn't have to.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's interesting. Like, recently, the person that was in charge of the iOS operating system at Apple, Scott Forstall, was basically ousted. Microsoft says it was a mutual decision between Sinofsky and the company that's by Ina Fried up in All Things D. The breaking Windows head Steven Sinofsky to leave Microsoft. Excuse me, Windows head Steven Sinofsky to leave Microsoft, breaking being the type of story it was when it was released on Monday. And it's basically they took Sinofsky's job, they split it across two of his deputies, one basically running the engineering, one running the business side of things. Steve Ballmer basically says he wanted faster cycles. Sinofsky had basically, been in charge of Office for years and years and years, and helped kind of tighten things up on the Windows operating system team after Windows Vista, and then basically said, okay, how do we take, Windows 7, everybody loves it, and then basically was like, how do we take the operating system in the future, and oversaw the biggest, by far, the most radical change in Windows since Windows 95. Yep. The really first major attempts to change the interface in 17 years. And, people love it, people hate it. It generates traffic. A lot of clever headlines are out there. But I don't think, don't hold your breath. You're going, if you want the startup button back, you're running third-party software, you're going back to Windows 7. That's
don't expect there to be a patch like January 1st that says, just kidding, guys. Here's the old start menu. We got rid of that Metro interface on everything but tablets. Although, I don't know.
Email us, twitch@twit.tv. That's the email address. You can subscribe to the show if you're interested at twit.tv/twits. That's where you can find all the back episodes. You can find links to the RSS feed if you want to subscribe. And we should take a moment to thank our sponsor this week, Lantronix.
That's right. Whether at the home or office, printing from your iPhone or iPad or iPod Touch for that matter can be a challenge. If your printer isn't AirPrint compatible, you're out of luck. AirPrint is a technology that Apple built into its operating system. Applications on the phone and on the tablets can just take advantage of it to easily print. However, used to be that your printer had to be AirPrint compatible, or you had to go through third-party applications, or you had to go through these online print services, or email yourself documents so you can get them on your computer, and all this other kind of weird stuff. So the solution that Lantronix came up with is called the XPrint Server, and it enables wireless printing from your iPad, iPhone, iPod Touch. It eliminates the need to print through apps, install software, or email yourself those documents for printing, and it works with the USB or network printer you already own, whether it's wired or wireless, which is really cool. So, of course, because it does take advantage of AirPrint, you can print directly from iOS native menu, no apps to buy, no software to load. It supports more than 4,000 top brand network printers, and you can go on their website and check for your printer support. It's easy to use, automatic discovery and setup of printers. The setup is really, really, really simple. You open the box, you plug it in, and you can start printing. And literally, that's not an oversimplification. We got ours in. We plugged in the network cable. We plugged in the power cable. We waited probably less than 30 seconds for the flashing light to go solid, which meant it had detected all of our printers. I'll go on the iPad, go to the print option, and our printer was showing up on the network. It's really, really easy to use. But if you want, it has advanced configuration options via a web interface, which kind of has like a web client that you can log into. One XPrint server supports multiple printers and virtually unlimited iOS devices. The Home Edition is $99 and supports 8 USB printers and 2 network printers. And the Network Edition of the XPrint server is $150, $149, and supports unlimited network printers. It's great for home or office. If you have a small office like me, you can probably get away with the Home Edition. If you have a larger office with more network printers, obviously you want to go with the Network Edition. Plus, it does allow your USB printers to be shared with all users over network. So if you have a USB printer attached to your PC now or whatever it is, you attach the XPrint server to it, and it kind of acts as a print server for the rest of your computers or laptops and, of course, your iOS devices at the same time. So it's great for your home, great for your office, even works with large multifunction printers as well. Here's all you need to do. You need to go to xprintserver.com, printserver.com/twit for more information and to buy. And we have a special offer for you. We try to do those whenever we can. If you use the coupon code TWIT, TWIT, you'll get free shipping on your order. So remember, visit xprintserver.com Shrout.com/twit, and at checkout enter the coupon code TWiT, and give it a look. It's pretty interesting. If you want to see kind of my personal experiences with it, we did like a little short video on it too. If you go to youtube.com/PCPer, you can scroll down. I think to a couple weeks ago, we did a little video on the Lantronix Xprint server, and I literally show you on the video me plugging it in, plugging network cable in, and ta-da! You're set up and you're running and that kind of stuff. Show you how it just detects everything. Go a little bit through the advanced configuration options if you want to handle it, that kind of stuff. But I was very surprised by actually how simple it was. So if printing from an iOS device is something that you want to do, or you've got multiple people using iPads and iPhones and iPod touches, you can give them access to a printer for $99 really, really easily.
There you have it.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Lantronix.
Thank you very much. So we should fire up a few email questions before we run out of time today. And, of course, I just managed to bury the show notes. There they are. This is kind of interesting. We lost the name on this one, but viewer said that's okay. It happens. Says, I play Tribes Ascend competitively. Most of the players, like to stream my games. However, when I start streaming, I use XSplit to broadcast to Twitch, TWiT.ch.tv. My game seems to take a performance hit. I understand that this would happen, but it almost becomes unplayable. I've checked the frames per second during this, and it's still at the cap of 90 frames per second that I set, but it feels very choppy. So much so that when I shut it off, XSplit, it feels like I have a 120 hertz monitor. What could I buy, hardware software, that would alleviate this problem? I've thought about putting a capture card in the girlfriend's computer and using that for streaming, or building a new cheap rig for it. I am looking for cost effectiveness, but if need be, I may spring for the extra oomph. Are my expectations too high? Possibly. This is one of those things where we need to know what processor you're running, what GPU you're running, how much RAM you have.
Right.
A lot of people report XSplit like maxing out their CPU, or using like 40% of the CPU. It's really interesting.
Yep.
Stream starts and CPU usage hits 98%.
We use XSplit. Technically, I'm using XSplit right now to send our video back for our version of Twitch, TWiCH, and it is a CPU hog. And since he's using a single system for this, so basically what XSplit does is it captures the local gameplay, and it is very CPU intensive to do that, because then it has to encode all that video in real time to stream it out in real time. So it's doing a lot of stuff. Now, what's interesting to me is he says that the frame rate is apparently still at the 90 frames per second cap, even when he's doing that. That to me seems a little bit odd. I would expect to see the frame rate drop pretty significantly when doing that, and that's pretty much the case across the board. Even if you've got a really high-powered system, the system we use XSplit on is a 6-core Nehalem overclocked to 4.2 gigahertz or something like that, and we still are always tweaking encoding settings. We're always changing little bits of software here and there to keep our CPU utilization, and we're not even gaming on that machine. That is a dedicated streaming machine.
Right. Yeah,
that would be the best. That would be if you want the best experience, that's the thing you should probably do, is build a dedicated streaming machine, and then you have to have a capture card, like a AverMedia Live Gamer HD or a Blackmagic Intensity Pro or something like that, and then you just mirror your display, one to what you're gaming and one to the capture card, and you can do it there, and you won't worry about it actually affecting your gameplay at all. It's all handled on a different system, and you can tweak it completely independently. But the other option is to build a really beefy system, since we don't really know what you have, to be able to handle both of it.
Yeah, I mean, the other problem is if you're trying to do 720p or 1080p captures, try dialing it down. It's funny, if you go to the XSplit, XSplit.com/forum/fact.php, If you experience a frames per second drop, don't be alarmed. Depending on the game and your hardware, even substantial drops of game frames per second, hundreds, can be expected. For advanced gamers, this is a touchy subject, but streaming is many times tougher on the computer than just about any other task you ask of it.
Yeah. I've gone through this was an interesting question for me to get, because we've dealt so much with the inner workings of XSplit and all these different encoding applications, like to the point where there's areas in the encoder where you can set your own command line arguments for the X264 encoder, where we're doing those certain things, setting where the keyframes are, setting how often certain things like that are happening, and it made a big difference for us. It's just not easy to wrap your head around.
I will say, don't try to monitor your video that you're capturing on the same. If you're playing and capturing on one box, don't try to monitor it on that box. Use somebody's iPad or Android tablet or somebody else's computer, or call a friend and have them watch it on their system, because you're really going to nuke your game. If you're trying to like play the game, capture the game, and view the stream live on one box, you're in trouble. And they even say in the FAQ, like, the best way to do this is with another machine if you really want the high-end performance.
Yep.
Eric has a question about an NVIDIA GPU on an AMD motherboard. He says, first of all, love the show, weekly listener status. Thank you, Eric. And I used to watch Tech TV all the time. Hopefully Ryan is having Did you have a great time in New York? I forgot to ask.
I did. I did have a great time in New York. I did almost zero amounts of work, and just got to hang out in the city, which is good.
Nice.
It was fun. Yeah.
So, Eric's issue. I've recently swapped the video card out in a micro ATX box. It's built from older hardware, but I'm disappointed with the quality gains or lack thereof. I used to have an Asus HD 5770 crammed in there and was happy with the performance, gaming mostly, but airflow was an issue with the card spanning the entirety of the case. I've just installed a GTX 650 because I picked it up on a good deal. It's about half the length, and I thought it was cool to have two HDMI ports. I'm noticing screen tear in Mass Effect 3, Skyrim auto-detected high instead of ultra-high. Weird for a CPU-given game. And the Windows Experience Index benchmark dropped 1/10 of a point in both gaming and aero performance. I'd worry a little bit less about that. He says, I have the latest drivers installed. The video card is driving two Acer 23-inch 5 millisecond monitors at 60 hertz. It's an interesting combination. AMD Phenom 2X4 970 Black Edition, overclocked to 3.8 gigahertz. Standard Western Digital hard drive, 64-bit Windows 7, 700-watt power supply, Asus M4 A785-M motherboard, 4 gigabytes of RAM. Is there any reason an NVIDIA card wouldn't work well in an AMD board? Does having two monitors negatively impact performance, even if the second is off? And aside from the obvious of installing an SSD, which I plan on doing eventually, what's my best and most cost-effective method of improving performance? First thought, in terms of gaming performance, the SSD is going to help you load levels. It's going to start the game faster. It's going to launch Windows faster. It's going to open files faster. It's not going to do squat for gaming performance. Gaming performance, once the texture maps are loaded into the GPU and the game itself is loaded in main system memory, it stays in the CPU and the main system memory. SSD is not going to help you there. He says, I've been an AMD fan for a long time, but I've got the feeling Intel and NVIDIA are the way to go moving forward. Help, guys. What do I do?
Here's what I think the real problem is. Mm-hmm. The GTX 650 is not a huge increase in performance from a Radeon 5770, because he didn't even get the 650 Ti. He got a 650,
which is kind of an aging card at this point.
Well, I mean, it's relatively new. It's a lower end card. Right. So you went from a lower end card to a lower end card. It's probably a little bit faster, but I was looking at, even if we look at the 650 Ti, mm-hmm. It's just barely faster than this HD 7770. I'm trying to think back, how does the 7770 compare to the 57s? And it's faster, but not noticeably so, or not dramatically so. First of all, the Skyrim auto-detecting ultra versus high. That doesn't matter. What were the actual frame rates? What was the actual game experience, right? Sometimes the game looks at an older card. Actually, I would be very surprised if Skyrim auto-detected ultra settings for 5770. I don't think it should do that. But what you should really go in is look at, is the performance feel any better? Is the frame rate smoother? Those types of things. Screen tearing in Mass Effect 3 has nothing to do with gaming performance.
Right.
Do you not have VSync enabled anymore? since you've changed from an AMD card to an NVIDIA card.
Right.
There's no difference in terms of graphics card performance on an AMD platform. It doesn't matter, right? Just because you're using an NVIDIA GPU on a Phenom-based system versus an AMD GPU on a Phenom system, that's not really going to affect anything. Right. CPU performance is separate than GPU performance. They're not really tied together most of the time. So, like Patrick said, SSD is not really going to matter. Having two monitors affect performance? No, not really. Especially if you have one off. If you're mirroring it, kind of maybe, but even then, not really. I think his issue is he just didn't go up to a higher end card enough to see it, to see the differences that he expected to see.
It's newer. I spent money on it. I should see a noticeable difference.
Right.
This is also one of the reasons why I love holding on to like a notebook for like if I can manage it 3 or 4 years, because by the time you do finally upgrade to the next model, the CPU performance will have jumped so far that it's just an absolutely radical exciting change in performance. But yeah,
actually this is interesting. HWCompare.com gives me these kind of arbitrary metrics, but they have almost identical texel rates, almost identical memory bandwidth rates, and it looks like maybe 10% better pixel fill rates for the GTX 650 compared to the Radeon 5770.
Interesting.
The advantage is the GTX 650 does it using much less power, but obviously this guy's not concerned about that. Right? He wants to know about the gaming part. So basically,
get a considerably faster GPU, get a considerably faster GPU and a considerably faster CPU, or just accept it, or go back to the old card, sell the new card, and then wait another year and buy a new GPU. It's frustrating. It's the worst feeling when you update your system and you don't go, wow, this is amazing and worth every penny I spent. Because I've been there. It's painful.
I mean, the GTX 650 is about $110 video card.
Right.
If he goes up to like a 660, you're going to see a much bigger performance difference. You're talking about a $250 video card at that point. Right, there is a difference there. I'm sorry, actually, maybe more like $199, $209.
Right,
and you're going to see much bigger performance gaps between that and the 5770 for sure.
This week on Spend More Money on Hardware, Ryan and Patrick will discuss upgrades and why you should probably forget about retiring before you're 80. One last question before we go. We got an email from Jim about non-specified memory compatibility. He says, memory and motherboard manufacturers have lists of what model RAM is certified compatible with what motherboard. If you're using memory with the correct specs, could there really be problems that prevent it from working? I've had to remove elaborate oversized heat spreaders to make memory physically fit and manually enter timings in the BIOS that were not correctly detected, but never had any major issues. Have I just been lucky? Or is this something that has become more important as things get faster? You know, Jim, several people every year are actually killed through using non-certified combinations of memory. And so I was wondering if either one of us keeps a straight face. Look, for reasons that are short answer is there's a CYA factor for a major motherboard manufacturer to be like, we've tested this motherboard with these brands of memory and it works great. So these are our recommended brands of memory. You know, basically being like what they had in the lab, what they could scrounge with a few phone calls, what seems to be most popular. But the reality is memory is pretty much a commodity product. And the elaborate oversized heat spreaders that you pulled off are one of the ways many memory vendors, and I'm not saying there isn't premium memory and that premium memory isn't worth spending extra for, but a lot of what people go like, oh my goodness, that's got like the massive silver heatsink 4000. And the reality is that you don't need the massive silver heatsink 4000. The massive silver heatsink 4000 is kind of like the fins on a 57 Chevy, except in 40 years, the massive heatsink 4000 will basically, at best, be beer can material, and the fins on a 57 Cadillac will be 57 Chevy or 62 Cadillac, whatever. The fin, you know what I mean? Like, you're not going to be looking at. No, you have not been lucky. You know, you're more likely to run into problems with cheap memory or you know, off-brand memory. having an issue rather than it not being certified. I mean, there are people who only build computers with certified memory, but they generally should be spending more time doing things like watching cartoons, playing video games.
The idea of certified memory is just it is simply the specific modules that a motherboard manufacturer has physically installed in their motherboard and tested.
Right.
And that is simply a CYA thing, because if you have other memory and your system isn't posting, they can go, well, it wasn't on the certified memory list.
Right.
And it's just it is something that is no longer an issue.
Right.
I'm comfortable saying that, right? It used to be a big issue. And I'm talking like a decade ago, right? And now it's with the advent of these kind of auto detecting BIOSes and UEFI and stuff like that. It used to be a big deal where you couldn't mix and match different brands of memory or different speeds of memory, right? And now I have no hesitation to install 2 modules from Corsair and 2 modules from G.Skill or whoever it is, right?
Or all 4 of them.
Feel comfortable, right?
Yeah.
And feel comfortable that it's just going to work, right? It's going to work at the slowest possible speeds, but it's going to work.
We should also point, this is another good opportunity for us to point out, is that you don't need like 3200 megahertz memory. You need like, PC 1600 or PC whatever is specified for the motherboard.
Sure. But
beyond that, like, fiddling with CAS latency, fiddling with higher speed memory, it sounds really good. I have the 19047 XB12 super memory. And if you benchmark it, and you might see a difference in very specific benchmarks that say run information from the CPU to the memory. But in real world gameplay and video editing and use, you will never feel the difference. And that's something that's changed a lot.
There are very few cases where that's the case.
Yeah.
There are very few instances where that's the case. Yeah.
So, Jim, feel free to build with whatever memory that fits the specs that you can buy, preferably at the least expensive cost. And I will say I do tend to err to a reputable manufacturer because, and almost sometimes it seems like a reputable manufacturer is whatever my local computer store keeps in stock over, say, I'm not going to name any names because it seems like a lot of the memory companies occasionally have a bad run. I have always had really good luck with Crucial. Spent a lot of money on Crucial memory in the last few years and never had a problem. So, but then again, I haven't really had a problem with any memory in the last few years that I can think of.
Exactly.
So, Jim, you are safe. Do not worry. Basically match the specs and don't worry about the rest, dude. You'll be fine. PC Per, what's coming up this week, man?
Oh, man, you ask me this every week, and I never really prepare for it. We still have a lot of our Windows 8 stuff that we haven't actually gone through. We had some issues. We were waiting for some software to come out, some additional apps to kind of give our take on stuff. We have a Digital Storm Mini ITX gaming PC that's built with a 1U server rack mount power supply, which unfortunately makes it a little bit noisier than I would prefer, to say the least. That one will probably be up in the next couple of days. And we have lots more motherboards that have trickled their way out. We got a new motherboard in from from MSI. It is a Thunderbolt motherboard integrated for like $160.
Really?
Yeah. So Z77 board with Thunderbolt for like $160. It's for sale now. I think it's the Z77A G45 Thunderbolt.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's in terms of lowest cost to entry to Thunderbolt market. This looks like it'll be it. So, how about on Techzilla?
For a mere 3 Thunderbolt cables, you can get an entire motherboard.
Yes, still debating.
With Thunderbolt ports. Actually, it's been a really fun week. We got Lori Grunin hopefully coming up next week. We have a whole series of photo editing tips to salvage your Thanksgiving photo nightmares coming from actually the product manager for Photoshop Elements is going to be on. We had Sasha Sagan on this week with a roundup of the latest new phones. Basically, his picks on AT&T and Verizon and T-Mobile, hint, Nexus 4. And his personal favorite Windows 8 phone, which oddly enough is not the Nokia 920, although he has a lot of shiny things to say about the Nokia 920. So that was actually a lot of fun to record. We got Vizio's new soundbar and a whole bunch more stuff up at Techzilla, TEKZILLA.com, and PC.
Oh, yeah, and I'm sorry, and I was going to plug the Hitman stream we're going to do on Tuesday as well. PCPer.com/live is where that'll be. Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. You can do the rest of the time zone math yourself, but come join us. We're going to give away some video cards. We have like 18 games to give away or something like that.
Nice.
A lot. Yeah.
Very nice. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware. If you want to hear more of them, if you're new to the show, do us a favor, twit.tv/twitch, TWICH, or twitch@twit.tv is the email address if you want to send us a question. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Ryan Shrout.
We'll see you next week on Twitch.